Hello and welcome to Rock Your Reg Live, presented by Move Texas. I'm your host, Charlie Bonner, and it is a pleasure to be with you, a pleasure to be out of my house and in this beautiful registration station. And a happy National Voter Registration Day to you. We're so excited to be celebrating with you in this way. If you know anything about Move Texas, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit working to build political power for Texas's young people. That manifests itself in a lot of voter registration. As of this morning, we've registered 32,000 registered voters this year, all young people across the state of Texas. And we're fundamentally changing the electorate here in Texas, and it's something that I'm extraordinarily proud of. You're gonna hear a lot about voter registration tonight. It's everywhere. And it's gonna be musicians, politicians, activists, and me talking about why you need to get registered to vote. So why wait? We don't need to wait for hour 3 of the program for you to get registered. You can visit movetexas.org/register and check your voter registration status. If you've moved since the last time you registered or just want to check again, make sure that you do it right now. You can request a form be mailed to you or print one off right there and get it sent in before the October 5th deadline. It's going to be at the bottom of your screen all night if you forget, but don't wait a minute, do it right now. And if you have any questions about getting registered to vote or voting in general, we know it's not easy in Texas. This is one of the biggest voter suppression states in the country. They don't make it easy on you on purpose. So ask your questions. We're going to answer them live throughout the night. And if you haven't celebrated National Voter Registration Day before, where have you been? It's been going on since 2012, and on National Voter Registration Day, they've registered nearly 3 million voters all across the country and gotten them ready to vote. Now, not to brag or anything, but for the past 3 years in a row, Move Texas has held the largest National Voter Registration Day drive in the country. We're hoping to continue that trend tonight, fingers crossed, but we can't be with you on campuses today as the COVID-19 pandemic continues across Texas. So instead, we've mailed out hundreds of thousands of voter registration forms to young people across the state. And tonight, volunteers all across Texas are calling those young people and helping them walk through the process of becoming a registered voter. They're doing a phone bank right now on Zoom. If you wave to them, give them a little support in the chat. It's not an easy job, but it's never been a more important job. And so we're so grateful to all those folks. We'll be keeping track of the numbers all night. I actually can give you an update so far. We started making calls this morning at about 10 a.m. So a lot of calls have been made. Right now, we're at 51,000 calls just to start us off on this program, making my job rather easy, which I love to see. We'll be checking back in with them all night, so you want to stay tuned to these live segments. So let's hop into these critical conversations. The first one about voting rights, the youth vote, and redistricting, with Move Texas's own executive director, Drew Galloway, and the former Attorney General of the United States, Mr. Eric Holder. But before we dive into this is Rock Your Reg, so I think we should start with a little bit of music. Coming to us tonight from El Paso, representing all sorts of different genres, a real melting pot, just like El Paso. Please welcome Estero Romance.
Happy National Voter Registration Day. I am so excited to speak today with Attorney Eric Holder. Welcome, Attorney General. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you.
Excellent. Well, today we're celebrating National Voter Registration Day. So, in your opinion, why is it so important for young Texans to get registered to vote right now?
Well, there is so much at stake in the coming weeks. I mean, for starters, I think we're facing the most important election of our lives. And I think this is an existential election. Um, we have to make sure that the nation that we love has the leaders that we need. And what happens in this election, both at the federal level and just as importantly at the state level, and that's really important, the state level. This is going to shape our politics for the next decade and beyond. And if we only look at what is happening inside your home state, we can still find so many reasons to make sure that people have the ability to cast a ballot this fall. I mean, what happens in state legislative races in Texas will help determine whether or not you're going to have fair maps for the next decade. You think about that. Races that will be decided in the next few weeks will have an impact on the next decade here in Texas. So there's an awful lot that's on the line.
Excellent. So now about All on the Line. All on the Line was founded to combat gerrymandering, end map manipulation, and finally have fair districts. After serving in the Obama administration, why is this issue where you wanted to get back in the fight?
When I left office, and I guess just before we left office, President Obama and I talked about this, and we decided that we were going to engage in a fight for fair redistricting. We identified gerrymandering as one of the structural barriers that was preventing progress on so many of the issues that we care about, that everybody cares about. And really, I view this as kind of a natural extension of the work that I did as Attorney General to protect voting rights. At its core, the issue of redistricting is about making sure that the people of America are deciding our fate, not the special interests, not interested politicians, but the people are deciding. For the past decade, gerrymandering has allowed politicians to cater to those special interests and to the extremes of their party instead of doing what the people who they represent, want to have happen. Now that's got to change. That simply has to change, and it's only going to change if we have fair maps. So I think of the fight for fair maps as really a fight for our democracy. It's about electing leaders who are going to listen and who are going to act on the issues that we care about, and who are going to be more responsive to the people who these politicians are supposed to represent.
So Texas is one of the most gerrymandered states in the
Yeah.
entire country.
Yeah.
What impact does gerrymandering have on young people and young voters across the state? And how is the shortened census affecting this fight?
Well, unfortunately, unfortunately, you're right. Texas is one of the most badly gerrymandered states in America. Self-serving politicians have essentially sidelined the people that they're supposed to represent, and really significantly diluted the power of the vote that every citizen has in Texas. And if that wasn't enough, the leaders in the state legislature have used this, what I will call illegitimate power, to push through some of the most some of those backward laws in the country, restrictive voter ID laws, attacks on women's reproductive rights, the undermining of workers' rights. I mean, I want young people to know that these are issues that are affecting, their lives at this very moment. I mean, gerrymandering absolutely has an impact on you, young people, and the things that you care about. There's no issue that it doesn't touch. I mean, if you're tired of seeing a lack of progress on a range of issues. Again, mitigating the harmful effects of climate change, immigration reform, access to affordable health care. You can most likely find gerrymandering as the root of the problem with regard to those issues. Now, on the census, a rushed 2020 census is a major, and it's a completely unnecessary obstacle that's standing in the way of Americans receiving proper representation. And I got to understand that the census is important. It determines, political representation in America. And if you're not counted, your community will not have the representation that you deserve. But it's also used to distribute about $1.5 trillion. That's $1.5 trillion in funding for healthcare, education, and infrastructure. So over and over again, we've seen this administration try to weaponize the census for their own political gain. It's clear they got no interest, in actually counting every person in the United States, which is what the Constitution requires. And so, focusing on the census is something that we all have to do.
So back in 2014, you were one of the first administration officials to travel to Ferguson following the tragic death of Eric Gardner, a moment that sparked months of protest and a movement. This summer brought about similar unrest following the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Tony McDade. What is your message to young folks who have taken to the streets for years now demanding change?
Well, I think about, 6 years ago, I remember meeting with the president back in 2014, and we were talking about whether or not I should go to Ferguson. It was, it turned out well, but at the time when we were making the decision, it was a risky thing. I mean, I didn't know exactly how people were going to react to my presence, but we ultimately made the determination that, that I ought to go. And I think the thing that struck me the most then was that there were young people who were there, and they were unbelievably impressive, who were, in a lot of ways directing the peaceful actions that you saw on the streets. My message to the young folks who have taken to the streets today is that I'm proud. I'm proud of the tireless work that they're doing. The moment that we are now in does not exist without their hard work and the activism that we all saw, earlier in Ferguson. And because of that, I think a wide swath of the American people, are finally recognizing what Black Americans have known for some time now, that racism is a factor in the American criminal justice system. Systemic racism is something that exists. And, people who say it does not are simply not looking at the facts. I think young people in America too often underestimate the power that they have. The power. This country was founded by young people. The oldest people of the founding fathers was Ben Franklin, but beyond that, everybody else was in their 30s and in their 20s. Young people like John Lewis helped lead the civil rights movement. The young people marching today, both the kids from March for Our Lives and those taking to the streets now to demand equality, that gives me hope for the future of this country. Young people, don't underestimate the power that you have.
So Attorney General Holder, Move Texas was founded to engage young people, particularly in local elections. So following the Black Lives Matter protests in Texas, we're seeing more and more young people energized and engaged, not only at the presidential level, but also in district attorney races and in county commissioner races. Do you see this as a shift over the last 6 years in the movement?
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually think this is one of the silver linings of the past few years. It's an acknowledgement by more Americans of the importance of these so-called down ballot races. I actually hate that term. Down ballot makes it sound like it's less important, but these are important races. It's what we are focused on with the redistricting process. Making sure that people who are in power at the state level support fair maps. And the same is true for criminal justice reform or police reform. I think Congress and the federal government, the administration in Washington, definitely have a role to play. But on a day-to-day basis, the local DA, the local sheriff are setting the policies in your community. So you got to focus on these state races, these local races. Those are extremely important ones, and they have an impact on your day-to-day lives.
Excellent. My final question is, what is one thing that gives you hope in this moment?
Well, I think one, what gives me hope is the tireless work, and I'd say, the bravery that we see from our young people, every single day on a whole range of issues. As Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But that doesn't happen on its own. It only happens when citizens everywhere are participating and making sure that that arc does bend towards justice. People participating, in this voting drive, put their hands on that arc and pull it towards justice. I'm confident that everyone involved in this movement will be the ones who make sure that happens. That arc is actually bent. And I'd like to think that the people listening today know at least a couple of things. The first is that, this nation can get better. I've seen it happen in my lifetime. That doesn't mean that we're yet in a place where we need to be, but with collective action, we can change laws and we can change minds. We can change the hearts of people. The second thing is that this former attorney general is extremely proud of you. You give me hope. The work that you're doing today, that you will do in the weeks and months and even in the years ahead, is going to make America live up to who we should be, a diverse, equal society. I look forward to joining all of you in the work that you're doing today, the work that you're doing in the coming months, and hopefully be with you in the years to come. We can do this. We can make this happen. We can make this happen.
Well, on behalf of everybody here at Move Texas, Attorney General Holder, thank you so much for joining us today. Texas is a battleground state because young people made it a battleground state. And so get registered and go vote in November. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
My name is Alex Burnell, and I'm the Advocacy Manager here at Move Texas. I'm registering to vote because if we vote as young people this November, we fundamentally change the state of Texas in down-ballot races all across the state. And it's so critical to change in those down-ballot races in our cities and counties because we've got issues like climate change, issues like mass incarceration, issues like aggressive policing, economic inequality, and segregation to deal with. So I want to lead the way, I want to be part of the generational change, and that's why I've registered to vote.
Move Texas is moving our state forward in a more progressive direction to address the many challenges that we face. Whether it is the matter of police violence, the climate crisis, or educational opportunity, we can't move forward unless more Americans move forward with us by voting and registering this year. National Voter Registration Day underway, an opportunity to register to vote right through October 5th, the final deadline. Be sure you're registered. Every friend is registered. We have to preserve American democracy. We need more people to do it. Our democracy will be stronger the more Americans who participate.
Welcome back, and thank you so much to Attorney General Eric Holder for being a part of this very special National Voter Registration Day, and of course to our friend Congressman Doggett for all of his incredible work and for being part of this, and a true voting rights champion. Make sure that you're following his work. I do want to take some of the questions that we're getting in the chat. Make sure that you're asking more, how to register, whatever you need to know ahead of this election. Make sure you're dropping them there. I'll be happy to answer whatever I can. Okay, first question here is from Courtney, and she's asking, I've heard that we have a poll worker shortage. How can we sign up to be one for early voting or election day? Super good question, Courtney. Now, when I heard there was a nationwide poll worker shortage, I said, sign me up. And then they said to work elections, and I was like, oh, okay, let's walk it back a little bit, maybe. But all kidding aside, it really is important that we have everyday folks signing up to be poll workers this year. The average age of a poll worker in Texas is about 65. They're the most at risk for COVID-19. And so we need to give them a break this year. We need to sign up, step up, and make sure that we're taking on those positions to keep our elections going, make sure that we don't have to close any polling locations, keep those lines short. That's what being a poll worker actually does. We have a widget on our website. You can go to movetexas.org/workelections, find out about all of those eligibility requirements, and actually sign up directly within that website. We'll follow up with you, make sure you have all the information that you need, and connect you directly with the county that you'll be working in. So it's a really big way. If you're already registered, you're already doing your part, take that next step and become a poll worker. So thanks for that question, Courtney. Emily is asking, or I guess telling me, that this jean jacket is fire. You are absolutely correct, Emily. Thank you so much for noticing. But even more important, I think, is the t-shirt. We got Ranger registration here. The t-shirts are for sale at shop.movetexas.org, and all that money goes to helping us turn out more young people to vote. So make sure that you're grabbing that great swag designed by our friends at McGraw Jesse, who are one of our presenting sponsors tonight. Big fans of their work. Mitch is asking, MoveWorks gives me so much hope for the future. Thank you so much, Mitch. We really appreciate that. And it really is all about the volunteers and the incredible work that they're doing tonight to call all of those unregistered voters. Now, if you can't join us tonight as a volunteer, there's a lot more opportunities headed to this election, and it's never been more important to get involved. So you can go to movetexas.org/volunteer. We got lots of shifts every day, call in lots and lots and lots of people. So make sure that you sign up there. Now, I think we should get back to the conversations here. And this next one I'm really excited about. This summer brought on a lot of conversation about the Black Lives Matter movement. And it is so critical that we center the voting rights conversation with the Black Lives Matter conversation. So this next panel is Black Voters Matter, and it's going to be moderated by a UT professor and my dear friend, Dr. Rich Reddick. So let's take a look.
Well, welcome everybody to the Move Texas panel on Black Voters Matter. I'm Rich Reddick. I'll be moderating this. I'm a professor at UT Austin and College of Education. And I just want to really quickly go through our co-panelists. We've got Royce Brooks, Executive Director at Annie's List. We've got Chris Hollins, the Harris County Clerk, and Raven Douglas, Political Director at Move Texas. So, folks, first of all, thank you for making the time to be here. This is such an important issue, and I'm really glad that we're all able to come together and discuss this. So the first question I have is a question that is immensely important. I'd love to hear all your perspectives on this. Why is it important that young Black Texans vote in this election? Royce, you want to start us off?
Great. And thank you so much to Move for putting this together. You know, this election is absolutely life and death. We're seeing it right now. The people we have the chance to elect into office can change our lives. They can impact our lives. And young Black voters have as much at stake as anybody, and frankly, a lot more in terms of the changes that we need to see from our leaders. So it is important because it is existential.
Wow. Raven, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Royce said it best, but I think just to reiterate what she said, I think it's super critical for young Black voters to engage in this election because there are so many crucial races up and down the ballot that affect a multitude of different issues that impact our lives. And so whether it is, policing, or whether it's criminal justice reform, or, whether it's climate change and the fact that Hurricane Laura decimated Lake Charles, which is a predominantly Black city, there are a number of different issues and candidates at the local level and that have an impact on these issues. And so as Royce mentioned, November will change our lives. And so it's super critical that everyone shows out to vote, but more importantly, young Black voters, because there's a lot on the line.
Yeah, and I think both Raven, you and Royce made that point about not simply what's on top of the ticket, but all throughout, right? Not just simply, hey, there's one big national election we should be concerned about, but there are so many issues that are impacting folks every day. Clerk Hollins, tell us a bit about your perspective on why this is so important for young Black Texans.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I want to echo the sentiments of my sisters here, that clearly there's just so much more on the line. But I also just want to get down to brass tacks, right? And let's talk about power and how that works, right? We get to 2020, which has been tumultuous and challenging in so many ways. But, the death of Brother George Floyd sparked a movement, the largest civil rights movement in history, where now for the first time, we're seeing people across society, across the board, say that Black lives matter, right? And we've known that, of course, and that's great. And no one can take away the fact that your life matters. But what I've told a couple of people, young people in particular, is that you individually can make sure that you don't count, right? And so let's talk about that, right? Your life matters, but if you don't vote, you don't count. And the politicians that are in office, we can talk about whether they're on our side, whether they're not. We can talk about whether they're intelligent, whether they have good policies or not. But I can guarantee you that all of them can count because they keep their jobs by counting votes. And they serve the people who they think can deliver for them at the ballot box. And so if you're not one of those people, and more importantly, if your entire group is not one of those people, and we know that young people and young people of color are the least likely people to cast their votes, then you're guaranteeing that you don't count. And if you want to change that, if you want the opposite to be true, if you want your leaders to take you seriously, to listen to you, and not to listen to you out of the kindness of their heart, but to listen to you because they have to, then you have to count, period.
That's really well said. And I think you made the point about the accountability piece, right? So people don't have to respond or be concerned if you're not a viable voting bloc. You're not going to either show up or you're not going to advocate. So we have to make the process complete, not just the advocacy, but also the actual piece where we come to the polls and we say, I keep on saying we as if I'm a young person, youngish, and identifying, but you get what I'm trying to say. So let's talk a little bit about the current context, and let's talk about COVID-19. And that's disproportionately impacted the Black communities across the state and the country. In the state of Texas, there's been no attempt to make voting more accessible. Texas is only one of 9 states that has requirements to vote by mail. You just can't simply ask for a mail-in ballot. So what are ways that Harris County and other counties across Texas have been working to increase voter accessibility at the local level? And Clerk Hollins, this is a good place for you to tell us what's been happening down there.
Absolutely. I believe, and I hope that another county or jurisdiction raises their hand to compete with us on this, but I believe that Harris County has done more in 2020 for voter access than any voting jurisdiction in the country. We've provided more ways to vote, more avenues to have your voice heard at the polls, and to do so safely and conveniently and with the peace of mind that your vote's going to be counted than anyone else. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. One, we're offering drive-through voting. Folks can come and cast their ballots without ever getting out of their vehicles, regardless of whether or not you have a disability. You have the opportunity in Harris County to vote drive-through. Extended hours. We are going to have hours on multiple days in October during the early voting period, where the polls stay open until 10 p.m. to allow for people who have work obligations and family obligations to have a fair shot to have their voice heard. And on one evening, we're going to stay open for 24 hours so that everybody, regardless of your situation, has this one opportunity to cast their votes. And we're the first jurisdiction in the country ever to do that.
Well, that's amazing. The 24-hour aspect, I think, of our lives. What a novel idea. Drive-through with voting. I mean, let's get some more of that. That's incredible.
Absolutely. We're going to have a record number of voting locations. From 2016 till now, in the early voting period, we're tripling the number of locations where you can cast your votes in Harris County. And of course, for the first presidential election in Harris County history, you can vote on election day from any one of our voting centers. And we're going to have over 800 of them. And again, these are drastic increases from the past. Extending the period for early voting. Of course, that's true for all Texans. We're going to have 3 weeks. But we got there by Harris County sending a letter to Governor Abbott and requesting it. And we're glad that he responded as he did in that regard. But then voting by mail. What we're attempting to do right now is send a vote by mail application along with educational materials about who qualifies to vote by mail and who doesn't to every single voter in Harris County. Because we all know that not everybody has access to the internet. Not everybody is up to date on information. Not everybody gets the newspaper dropped on their door every morning. And so what better way to educate people on their rights, to help them to understand and decide for themselves if they are eligible to vote by mail, than by actually sharing the rules with them and then providing them with an application so that if they make that decision, they can conveniently apply on the spot. That is something that is also, first in Texas. We did this in June. We mailed to all of our seniors across Harris County, and we were happy that other counties followed suit. But now we're making the first attempt to send it to every single registered voter in Harris County. Voting by mail is the safest and the most convenient way to cast your vote, especially now as we're enduring, the second wave. We may be even to the third wave now of COVID-19 throughout Texas and the South. But also something that some of us don't remember, which is before COVID was a thing, we were all concerned that this was the first year with no straight ticket voting. Lines are going to be longer across this state. And so to be able to vote from your kitchen table, to be able to vote from your sofa and place that in the mail, or come and drop it off at any one of our county clerk's offices, another first in the history of Texas, makes voting by mail safer and convenient for all, but of course those who are eligible, because Texas is one of the 7 states, I believe, that does not have universal vote by mail during the time of COVID-19.
Yeah, all those things you mentioned, I think, really speak to the ability to take the time you need. I know when I go vote in person, I'm always feeling, whether there's a line or not, a little bit of pressure to keep it moving, right? And so if you're at home and you're able to sit down and do your research and go through it at your pace, that's got to be a huge advantage to the democratic process. So Royce, a question for you. So we're consistently seeing a lack of presidential engagement in youth communities across the country. Tufts did a poll before Super Tuesday and found out that 66% of millennial and Gen Z Texans had not heard from a presidential campaign. And just last month, the Alliance for Youth Action released a report that found that 40% of young voters in battleground states had not been contacted by the Biden campaign. How are Texas candidates connecting with young Black voters?
In terms of outreach to young Black voters in particular, and young people in general, campaigns talk to people they believe will vote, right? They look at voting history. They go and talk to those folks first and often. Young people may not have any voting history, right? If it is your first eligible election cycle, you don't have that history of participating in elections that will tell the campaign experts to go talk to you, right? It is not reasonable, and it's sort of not what people think happens, right? But like there is a reason why campaigns spend so much energy and so many resources talking to so-called swing voters, right? These are people who are going to go vote and who people believe can be persuaded, right? And it leaves so many people out of the conversation. To Clerk Holland's earlier point about power, do we feel as though we lack power because we don't vote, or do we not vote because we feel we lack power? Right? It is a
circular,
real chicken and egg type of thing. But one thing we can do is decide to vote.
Well, kind of related to that, although campaigns don't traditionally engage youth populations for the reasons you mentioned, we've seen a surge in youth voter turnout in the last couple of years. In 2018, for the first time, voters under the age of 30 voted at a higher rate than voters over the age 65. And we also saw a 300% voter turnout increase in counties like Bexar County and Hays County and Harris County. saw record numbers of voter registration numbers. Will Black voters turn out this election? And if so, why? And how are organizations like MOVE engaging young communities of color? Raven, can you tell us a little bit about what's being done to engage this population?
Yeah, I think will young Black voters turn out? I think the easy answer is yes. I think what we have seen through the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement is that we saw an increase in voter turnout in the July runoff here in Texas. We saw an uptick in voter registration. With COVID happening, we saw there was a steep decline in voter registration. And then after the murder of George Floyd, we saw that increase. And so I think, this is a time where young people are looking for action. Young Black voters are looking for something to do, and they see voting as a direct correlation to finding a solution as we talk about criminal justice reform and policing. And so I think that we will see an uptick in youth voter turnout in general, but especially in Black communities. And so I think, we're really excited about that work, and we're trying to tap in to communities. And, prior to COVID, when we were out in the field, all of the cities that we work in are primarily Black and brown communities. And so we're at, Texas Southern University every day, and the University of Texas at San Antonio, which is a Hispanic serving institution. And we're in those communities. We empower young people to show up in their communities every day and engage other young people. But during COVID, we've just had to, we haven't stopped the work that we've been doing. We just have to get more innovative in the way that we've done it. And so prior to the voter registration deadline, we are working to register. We have sent a voter registration application to over 400,000 young people under the age of 30 here in Texas. And we are also committing to calling every single one of those voters. Potential voters. And so we are working with volunteers and young people and organizations like MOVE across the state to ensure that we can reach those people. And then after the voter registration day, we'll work to turn them out. And so we're really excited about this new program. And, I think that COVID has presented some hurdles, but we know that there are solutions to them. And so we're just trying to work through those new ideas.
That's so good to hear, Raven. And, as a professor, I have to always bring it back to like, how much do we actually know? So the fact that Netflix has 13th, the documentary available to watch on YouTube, you can really understand there's a history of suppression and just trying to keep people from getting to the polls. So I think what you're doing is really commendable because you're really taking it directly to the youth and being where they're at. And of course, just the peer impact, right? Having somebody your age telling you should do this is way more effective than somebody on TV telling you to do something, right? So as we kind of sign off, as a last part of this, question I have for you all is, what is one thing you want young Black voters to walk away with after watching this panel? And I'll take the moderator sort of piece and just sort of talk about the importance of history, right? Understanding that there's been a history of voter suppression in this country that is not recent. It's something that's been around for a long period of time. So knowing your history and knowing that these are longstanding efforts, things like poll taxes, and they all come to the present day where we have maybe more subtle approaches, but nevertheless approaches that keep people away from having access to the vote. So just in knowing the importance of your historical pieces and really making sure you're, I guess, honoring the fact that folks fought really hard for this opportunity for everybody to vote, to make sure you exercise that opportunity. So that's my point. Raven, do you want to be the one to start and give us your last thing for young Black voters to know?
Yeah, I think, in addition to what you were saying is not only should young Black voters, not only should we vote because our ancestors died for our right to vote, but we should also vote because we have the ability to really enact transformative power and change. And so, as Dr. Reddick mentioned, if our vote didn't matter, if it wasn't important, they wouldn't be trying so hard to disenfranchise us. And voting in Texas is hard, but it's not impossible. And so there may be a few extra steps, but you can still get registered and you can still turn out to vote. And, there will be people, whether it's Royce or Clerk Collins or MOVE, helping you along the way. But this is really the time now to get engaged because, we could change, the course of history.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you said about the fact there's a community of folks willing to help. Some of them are on this call, and certainly they're accessible in other ways. Royce, what are your thoughts about one last thing for young Black voters to know before we end?
I hope that young Black voters who have watched this come away with an understanding and appreciation of their own power.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well said. Clerk Hollins, you've been bringing us all kinds of knowledge about what you're doing in Harris County. So for the folks in Harris County and beyond, what is your piece of advice or information you want young Black voters to know?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that historical piece is important. That our ancestors, bled and died, not only for us to be free, but for us to begin to approach equality in this country. And that's still a fight that continues today, and a fight that it's now our responsibility to carry forward. And it can't just be the Ravens and the Royces. It has to be every single one of us who are marching down this path. And many of us have physically marched in the streets this year, and that's really important. But we have to march to the polls as well. And we have to vote like our lives depend on it, because they do. If you're a young Black man in particular, the leadership in your city, in your state, in this country can determine if it's okay for someone who is supposed to protect and serve you to gun you down in your neighborhood, period. And you can change that. But we also have to vote as if our parents' lives and our grandparents' lives depend on it. Because right now, if the United States response to COVID-19 had been average, not stellar, not world-class, had been average, then 150,000 of our parents and grandparents would still be with us today. And by the end of it, I was just reading reports today, it's looking like another 200,000 people are going to die by the end of this year. And that's all based on leadership and the lack thereof in this country and in this state. And so vote like your lives depend on it. Vote like your family's lives depend on it. Vote as if your interests are truly at stake, because they are.
You really just summarized it in a sort of heartfelt and meaningful way about sort of why this is important. It's not an issue, it's esoteric, it's actually about life. And, I know I was going to make one comment, but another comment, and that is just the intersectionality of what you care about. So I'm an educator. Some folks care about transportation. Some folks care about housing policies or the finance areas. All those issues really come down to judiciary. What policies, who judges if you have to get caught up in the legal system, right? Those things all matter. And I think it's really important. Everything you just said, Clerk Hollins, is about the life and death issues we're talking about, and liberty, right? It's not just those things, right? So anyway, this has been amazing. I thank you all so much for such great insights. This has been educational for me, and I'm sure everybody who's watching this will also walk away with some incredible insights. So thank you all for being part of this. Remember, there's so much access and help for you if you're interested in voting. So please, social media, websites, check them all out. Take advantage of these resources, and we hope to see you at the polls. Thanks so much.
Hey everybody, this is Congressman Colin Allred from Dallas. The most important office or position in our democracy has always been, and must continue to be, that of the citizen. And voting's how our democracy works. It's how everyday folks come together to make their voices heard, to create the change that they want to see. And in the words of the late, great John Lewis, this is the most important election in American history. And if John Lewis says it, then we have to listen. So regardless of what issues are important to you, or if you plan to vote early or on election day, you have to make sure that you have a plan and that you vote in this election. And the first step is checking your voter registration. Young people are leading the most critical conversations in our country, and I am inspired by you every single day. I ran for Congress to ensure that everyone could chase their version of the American dream, and that certainly means ensuring that everyone's voice is heard, especially yours. So register to vote today. And after you do that, ask your friends and family if they're registered and make a plan together and go vote. Our democracy is not a spectator sport. It needs your voice and your vote to work. Let's do it together. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Erica. I am the data manager at Move Texas, and this year I registered to vote because it wasn't too far long ago in history that people who look like me didn't have that option, and I think it's about time that our electorate is more representative of what the population looks like as well. So go to movetexas.org/register and exercise your rights. It'll be fun. It'll be good.
Hi guys, it's Andrea Rose, and this is Brian. First of all, we'd like to thank Move Texas so much for asking us to be a part of such an amazing event. I cannot express the importance of registering to vote and voting in itself. We are in a very uncertain time, and we are in need of leadership and guidance, in which we are lacking. So tell your friends, your family, your followers to go out and vote. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. With that being said, we have a couple songs for you today, and this first one is going to be called Prelude.
Maybe love me, life could be so sweet, and it's all a dream to me. Melancholy serves as a prelude. Baby,
Oh, hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Charlie Bonner here for Move Texas. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're just joining us, this is Rock Your Reg Live, presented by Move Texas. So glad to be with y'all live here in Austin. You just heard from Andrea Rose, the Latinx Velvet Dream Pop artist from San Antonio, Texas, which I would love for anyone to refer to me as a Velvet Dream Pop artist. What an incredible title. And thank you so much to her for being here tonight in San Antonio, where Move is headquartered, and so many of our folks are calling volunteers and calling voters right now. So grateful for that. How are we doing at home, everyone? We all right? We got drinks, we got snacks, we're holding up. There's a lot more, so I hope you're settled in. You got a couch to get comfy on. This is the first time I've worn jeans in like 6 months, so hopefully you're a little bit more comfortable than I am right now. But we're so glad that you're joining us. And while you're comfortable at home, you can still get involved. One of the easiest things that we can do right now is text that voter registration link to our friends. I know you're in at least one group chat, okay? Or Facebook or WhatsApp or the TikToks or whatever anyone is doing these days. Drop that link. Ask your friends if they're registered to vote, if they've checked to make sure that they're registered to vote. Coming from a friend, it means a lot more than coming from me here in Austin. So make sure that you do that right now. We can use all the help we can get. This is already the most visited day on our voter registration website, and we're just getting started, like I said. Now, I'm very excited about this next conversation. So much of our work here at Move is about cultural organizing, about working with musicians and artists to help them get involved in the civic process. It's something much more important than just making graphics or singing songs. It's about connecting and making civic engagement approachable to people and voting approachable. There's never been a more important time to do it. And so I talked to an expert on art and activism. You know her from Legally Blonde, from Hollywood on Netflix, where she was just nominated for another Emmy this week. And of course, for her work writing and starring in Anne, the Ann Richards biopic one-woman show. I talked to her about it all. So please enjoy this conversation with Holland Taylor. Ms. Holland Taylor, thank you so much for being here today, and happy National Voter Registration Day.
Well, it is an important day. It's never been more important than right now. I know people say that every election season, but this time it's true, baby.
I hear you. You get it already. You get it already.
Please call me Holland.
Well,
Taylor, anybody says Miss Taylor, I say, is Elizabeth here?
I was like, you have that Emmy behind you, okay? Listen, an icon in your own right. But I wanted to have you here today, an honorary Texan on this day, but so much of what we're doing is helping to elevate artists and young activists across the state to work together to turn people out to register to vote. And I think nobody better has used their platform and the projects that they've been a part of to really advance activism and advance causes. So I'm really excited to dig in with you today. And we can start with Anne, I think. Where better to start for Texas?
Start and end.
The beginning and end of it all. But I guess
and the omega of Texas.
Why were you drawn to that project? You wrote, starred in the one-woman show about Ann Richards. Why Anne?
Well, you say, why was I drawn to that project? There was no project. There was something that got born out of my, actually my grief that she died so unexpectedly. I had met her once with Liz Smith. I'd had lunch with her, probably when she was about 70 or 71 or so. And that's not why I did this. I mean, I happen to have had personal experience of her. And, but she was a real hero for me. I remember her election. I remember how astonished I was. I hadn't followed Texas politics, but I certainly followed that race. I kind of couldn't believe it. And then just the glory of her inauguration and how exciting it was to have this extraordinary woman in Texas. And she was followed quite a lot in national press. She made a ripple wherever she went. And then, of course, in her years, the decade after she was governor was where she really became an international icon, recognized. We see that flock of white hair in Tiananmen Square, and there'd be a mob around her in minutes, which was actually true. And she just was really important person in my universe, much more important than I knew, such that when she died, and I knew she had been unwell, but it just seemed to happen so quickly. And she had just turned 73, and so, which is very young in these days to die. And I could not deal with a world that did not have her in it. And that made me realize how much she mattered to me, in the sense of, if she was around to comment and to cheer us on, because she did find everything funny in the end and had such a marvelous positive sense of humor, and some Black humor in her as well, gallows humor. I just couldn't stand it, and I stayed mournful for a naturally long period of time. And when you feel those great feelings, most of us want to do something with it. I mean, everybody is creative in some degree or other. We want to do something with the feelings. And I, as an actor, thought, well, I sort of was of the right age then. That was in my 60s then. I thought I could play her. I think I could play her. And then I was musing on all the possibilities. And one day I was driving to work, and I wondered why I hadn't really taken action. I hadn't called some producer friends who also knew her and loved her, like George Clooney and Norman Lear. Why hadn't I called them to say, let's do something? And I suddenly realized, because it's a live play, because she's theater. She loved the theater, but mainly she is someone best depicted in the theater, the live contact with the audience, which was a kind of magic she had, lightning in a bottle. And I thought, if I could be like her, if I could really create her like a hologram, the inspiration, some of it anyway, would come right along with it, I thought. And I quickly was galvanized by this notion that became like a real mission. And I'm not a spiritual person particularly. I'm not woo. I don't, I've had a really very earthbound kind of life. I've had a lot of luck in my career, but a lot of it's been just, elbow grease and dedication and persistence. So that I would do this extraordinary thing, which is extraordinary accomplishment by any measure. I researched it for 3 years, and I researched it at a very high level. I mean, through good fortune and good connections, I was starting with Liz Smith, and who got me to Cecile Richards, who was a friend, and Ann Richards had been a very close friend of Liz's. So I was introduced to the family, and then to the important people around Anne as governor, who were also her best friends.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly many of the men and women in her administration were friends, personal friends, as well as political friends, long before she ever ran for office at all.
Yeah.
She didn't do that till she was in her 40s. So I suddenly found myself able to be in contact with anybody who was important in her world.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it. And I went to Texas many times. I traveled to other places too, to New York, to Vancouver Island, to see, to Salt Springs Island, to see Jane Hickey, who was her great consigliere, and to Washington to see Jennifer Treat, other places to see people like Kathy Bonner, and to Dallas, off my beaten path in Texas and Austin. I went to Dallas to meet with Mary Beth Rogers, who also then traveled to Santa Fe to stay with me, and Claire Korioth, who was her greatest old friend, also the head of the insurance board. So I spent a tremendous amount of time with the people who were her people.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that can top that, for getting to know someone, as well as my access to the archive and to a great deal of film on her. I probably have 300 hours of film on her. So I spent 3 years in a deep dive, a really deep dive, where I got to know her persona, which is what I was always in search of. This is not a biography, although there's a lot of interesting stuff in it that did happen. But I was in search of who she was. Because as I often say to people, it's not what she said, it's not what she did, it's who she was.
Mhm.
Who she was that stayed with people forever.
One last question about Anne before we hop into some other topics, but do you have a favorite Anne Richards quote that you picked up along the way?
No, none of her, there's only a few lines in the play that are actually quotes from her. People, because of how some other, like for instance, Mark Twain Tonight is all, it's literature. Mark Twain was a writer. It's all his writing that Hal Holbrook developed. This is written by me because I knew enough about her, learned enough about her that I believed I could accurately create her. So a few quotes from her in the play, but certainly none of the buzz quotes that she's famous for because they had no place in this play. But she was not as good as her one-liners and her jokes were. She liked to really develop ideas. So some of her quotes are longer because she liked to spin out her reasoning about something. She was a very smart woman. She fought like a general, take that hill. She took long views on things. And so she sometimes had more to say. But one quintessential thing that I did put in the play in that call to action was after summoning people to at least vote, which half the country doesn't do, which is still hard for me to believe. And I'm sure it was always hard for her to believe because it's the one thing that we have that's still real, I think. But after this exhortation, the different that she both cajoles, persuades, demands, asks for people to participate in government, she ends with something Anne actually did say, which is, why should your life be just about you?
Amazing. I want to turn to some of your other work, just kind of more broadly, because I think activism really is a part, and there are so many messages in so much of your work, whether it be equality and feminism and Legally Blonde, or the rich kind of power of Anne, and then Hollywood more recently.
Yes.
Which has this brilliant message of reimagining what Hollywood, I think, still could be, not even what it could have been, but what it still could be.
Right.
I was just watching it last night to kind of get ready for this interview, and I love, there's a line from it where Darren Criss says, "You don't realize the power you have. Hollywood can show people what's possible." And I think you've done that in so much of your work. And I wonder how much of that's been intentional, or if it's just inherent to who you are. And
I think it's inherent to who I am. And I never think of, and even in Hollywood, I didn't. I mean, I'm very character specific. I'm a Stella Adler trained actor. I'm not thinking about myself while I'm working. Of course, I am myself while I'm working. So obviously I am using myself, but not in the sense of a conscious application of my own thoughts or feelings. I'm trying to be in the imaginary circumstance of the character, which often requires some research, as in the case of Hollywood, or certainly Anne. So my characters, I've had the good fortune of playing some fabulous women. So I get to do fabulous things and say fabulous things and achieve some fabulous results and carry some fabulous messages. But I remember specifically, Hollywood was very recent. I remember the feeling of shooting it. And I remember I ad-libbed something. It wasn't really intentional. I didn't plan to do it, but they kept it in because it was correct. The characters talking about casting this Black girl, or what would have in 1947 been called a colored girl, this young colored actress in this role. And I said something like, when are we ever going to finally let a colored girl star in a movie? And I said, star in a goddamn movie. And it was just, it just popped out. But it was right because it carried the frustration of this, decent woman who was a very smart involved in the filmmaking world, and was just, a person who was more enlightened perhaps than some others around her. or less frightened of the political or financial outcome.
Yeah.
She believed it would work. She believed it would work because it was right, or that it was better, it was good to do because it was right, because it would make its own truth in time, which is, I think, what correct deeds in the political world do. That sometimes it might be rocky and beginning with new policies and new programs, but they're right, and they will eventually become strong and stable in how we do things in our world.
Yeah.
So I think it's always from the character point of view. I'm never thinking politically, but then our deeds are political often when we don't think they are.
I think just as we close out this conversation,
Oh, don't let's end.
I was like, we can keep going. Okay, we can keep going. But what is your message to people about getting registered this year? We're in the final days of being able to get registered before this critical election. And regardless of who folks are voting for, why do you think it's so important to get registered and get out there this year?
I think, there was a period of time I was very defeated, profoundly so. I was a senior in college when Jack Kennedy, who was my first president, as it were, my president, although I wasn't able to vote for him. I was too young to vote then. And Jack Kennedy was assassinated, and then Malcolm X, who was a hero of mine, was assassinated, and then Martin Luther King was assassinated, and in short order, Robert Kennedy was assassinated, and I kind of dropped out. Mm-hmm. I didn't even read the newspaper. I mean, I literally dropped out for about 10 years. And when I came back, I remember feeling I understood why I had disappeared, and it had not really been a choice. It had been something that happened to me. But now in recent years, I could actually almost weep. Voting for Obama made me weep. And just everything about voting. Going there, waiting, filling it out, every moment of it was voting for Obama. Both times. And, and then voting for Hillary. The fact is, voting is the most sacred thing we have. In many countries, they don't even have it. And if they do, it is absolutely without meaning. But it still has meaning here. Mm-hmm. And certainly if you go to the polls, God knows the post office has been branded and besmirched now by this president. So, but the vote is the most precious experience you can have. To experience fully and appreciate what you are doing. And I know 40 to 50% of the country does not vote. And if any one person now is listening to me who does not vote, I beg you to understand that you are missing something that could be very precious to you. It is your voice in the government. It is the minimal first step to participating in your government. And I beg you to consider doing it this year. That's all I can say.
I don't think I can say it any better than that. So I will leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for your time and for your amazing work. Such a big fan. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it very much, Charlie.
Wake up in the evening, fall asleep, watch the sunrise. I gotta make the baby, drive around in my disguise. So I'm burning the candle, it both ways in. Dark night of my soul is
tired now, exhausted from running in a race. Never when I'm pretty indifferent. Apathy, it is what it is, and it's slowly killing me. I'm pretty nervous now, I'm petrified. I'm stuck inside this rut for the rest of my life. Will I run in circles or just run in high? In the dreams I'm too afraid of passing me by. I'm pretty lost, yes, I'm gone astray from the things I once believed in. God, how'd I get this way? I'm pretty miserable now. So are you. But will I say we're fine? 'Cause it's the polite thing to do. I'm pretty scared, no, I'm terrified. But this is it, there's nothing more to this pretty little life. I'll graduate and find a job until it turns part-time. Then I'll crank out pretty babies, be a pretty little wife. I don't wanna be pretty anymore. I don't wanna be pretty anymore.
Hey guys, my name is Lainey Gonzalez. I'm an Austin singer-songwriter and also a registered voter. And I think you guys should be too. The deadline to register to vote for the state of Texas is October 5th. Let's see you in the polls in November.
If you want to have a say about the people who are leading and making those decisions for you and your community, then it's important.
If you don't believe that your vote matters, let me tell you, one vote truly matters. And if you'll take the chance to see this democracy work, I promise you, you will not feel like it isn't working for you. Keep fighting until it does. That's the key.
Everybody's opinion counts some type of way. Like if the person you pick wins or he don't win or she, whoever, like your vote still counts, your opinion counts. We all need to be heard because there's a lot going on in the world, in the community.
Find the issues that matter most to you. Find why you want to go vote in November and make a plan to go vote and be there.
Welcome back. Welcome back. How amazing that was for me. And thanks so much to Zach Persons and Lady Gonzalez. We're going to be hearing more from them in just a little bit. And you also saw a little bit of a clip from the Spurs, the San Antonio Spurs. We have a unique partnership with them here at Move Texas and started a first of its kind drive-through voter registration event with them last week where we registered more than 300 people in just a couple of hours. So super proud of that really innovative event. And before we go any further, I'm getting an update, a numbers update from our volunteer line. During that last conversation, we passed the 60,000 mark. We've called 60,000 unregistered voters. Thank you, Ranger Registration, the best mascot that anybody has ever had. We're super excited and there's a lot more calls to make, so make sure that you stay tuned, and we're really grateful for all those volunteers still on the line. I also want to take a quick minute here and just thank some of our sponsors. I could not do this event alone. Move could not do this event alone. A lot of folks helped us out, and we are so grateful to them. Shock the Vote ATX has been incredible. The C. Spence Group, Rock the Vote for their incredible support and everything they do year-round. Megara Jesse, what a partnership we have with them that I am so grateful for. They designed all the beautiful things that you see around the set. Panacea Collective has all this furniture that I'm sitting on. We love them so much. The House of Blues Music Forward Foundation for connecting us with some really brilliant artists. And of course, my host here tonight at Originator Studios. Y'all are the absolute best in making this look like a world-class production. So I'm so grateful to all of our sponsors and our partners in this fight, and there are so many more, and I thank all of you. So next is a really important conversation for me. When I think about why I'm registered to vote as a young gay guy in Texas, I often don't see myself reflected in our legislature or in Congress. And I think it's really important that the image we have of Texas is not just tumbleweeds and cowboy boots, even if I look great in these cowboy boots. But this is a rich, diverse state, and we need to really celebrate that. So this next panel is on LGBTQIA voters, and I'm so grateful for all the activists that joined us for this. It's helmed by journalist James Russell, so let's take a look.
Happy National Voter Registration Day, everyone. I'm James Russell. My pronouns are he and him, and my profession, and sometimes I think my life too, is journalism. I cover the legislature as well as architecture and drugs for multiple publications, and I would not recommend that you necessarily do all that combo. With that being said, let's go ahead and kick this off. I'd like everyone to first introduce themselves. We have 3 panelists here, all of whom I know well, but I would like you to know them better. Rebecca, could you start?
Of course. Hi, James. My name is Rebecca Marquez, and I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm the Texas State Director for the Human Rights Campaign.
And Ray?
Hey y'all, my name is Ray Martinez, and I'm the Texas Rising Director for the Texas Freedom Network, and my pronouns are they, them.
And Emmett?
Hey y'all, my name is Emmett Schilling. I am currently, my pronouns are he, him, hers, and I'm currently the Executive Director for the Transgender Education Network of Texas, or TENT.
Perfect. All of y'all's organizations are in some way involved in elections, either in mobilizing people or, like in the case of Vote Texas, getting people registered to vote. And specifically when we're looking at young people who, according to the Williams Institute, tend to skew younger, is, I guess, there anything that when y'all have talked to these voters that you've stressed, like with young voters, like something like voter suppression or LGBTQ discrimination, or is that already understood to them? Would any of you like to speak to that? Y'all are full of knowledge.
Yeah, I can speak a little to that. So working with young people, and Texas Rising works with a lot of young people of color on college campuses across the state. When we're talking to young people across the state, there's a lot of different types of access points, right? Some folks are aware of what's happening and kind of are a little plugged in, others aren't, right? So there's kind of different motivating messages that work for young people. But I would say definitely, talking to young people about LGBTQIA issues, right? This is really important. So this is maybe, going to be one of the most important elections of our lifetime. We have a federal administration that's not great to LGBTQIA folks. We have Texas state legislature, and just our government here in general is like not very friendly to LGBTQIA folks either. And those are both very motivating messages for young people, right? Young people want to make sure that LGBTQIA people, can secure, a house for rent, and not be discriminated on because they're trans, So I think that, that messaging is really important when we're talking to young people on the ground.
Rebecca, same question posed to you. Have you really been working with young voters, and what is kind of your role when you work in elections? You're in a little bit of a different position, I think, than some people. So.
Yeah, definitely. So, my role at HRC as a Texas State Director is that I lead our work across the state, really, with both on the ground organizers placed in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, our steering committees, which are our volunteer structures, and our amazing state partners like TENT, like TFN and Texas Rising and Equality Texas. And I lead our efforts both at the ballot box and at the legislature. So we really work all year round to advance LGBTQ rights in Texas. We don't specifically just work at Youth Vote, but we certainly do work with young voters. And just to echo Ray, I think, Ray just hit on so many amazing points. And I would just say that not only do we see, youth voters especially motivated to vote around LGBTQ issues, but really a whole widespread of issues rallying around marginalized folks. I think, we see a lot of excitement, not just to vote this cycle in November, to stop the bad harm that has happened to our country and to our communities, but also to really build and hope for a Texas that's better than we found it pre-COVID. So I think that that's really important message when we're talking to young voters to relay. And I think, one thing that we see is that peer-to-peer messaging are sometimes more important than, somebody from an organization or a politician necessarily doing it. So community-based outreach is critical, I think, this cycle.
And Emmett, here's your time to shine with the same question.
I think, given the state that we're in, it's pretty clear to trans folks, to non-binary folks, the importance of voting, the importance of engaging and getting an elected official that's going to really be there to understand the needs of their district and then to head to Austin to really carry that out and to really genuinely want to serve the district that they're running in these races to represent and understand the community in terms of everyone within it, to understand that a community that is inclusive, is diverse, is respectful of one another and committed to making that place a good place to be in really results in a better state overall for all of us. And I think the other side of that too is just for young folks, especially. I have a 21-year-old, and every day, I'd say at least on average, like 3 to 5 times a day now, they do a fun thing where they read a newspaper headline that's really depressing. Apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, by the way. And then inform me how bleak and abysmal the future looks for the young folks, and threatens to point out all the ways that I'm basically like one breath away from a boomer. So I think when it comes to that, is really understanding that through the voting process, you harness your power. You put people in places to represent you that are actually going to lead in a way that paves a better future for you and for, overall the well-being of the state that, you want to live in.
Cool. On that point, and especially for Ray, considering how engaged you are, have college students had any particular barriers to voting? That's not meant to be a loaded question. I imagine there are some, but have there been any issues you've had to address?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, just voting in general in Texas or like getting registered to vote in Texas has kind of been hard for a long time for everybody. And, specifically for college students, right? You can vote with a concealed handgun license, but you can't vote with your college ID, right? That's been something that's been highlighted for a long time, ever since voter ID got passed here in the state, or the requirement of voter ID in order to vote got passed here in the state. So that's been one hard piece that's been persistent, and that we've always had to have, voter education about with our young people that we work with. Another thing that's been kind of like exacerbated by COVID-19 is the fact that the Texas State Legislature passed House Bill 1888 in the last legislative session, which removed the capacity for counties to have temporary polling locations. And so we've seen that effect close down a polling location at UTRGV Brownsville's campus and at other, some other campuses across the state, and counties have been trying to work hard to try and make sure that they have like the funding to put something close to that area, right? Because sometimes it's a question about whether or not the county has the capacity to fund an election site. There's, we've seen COVID-19 exacerbate buildings that, or rooms that, college students have typically voted in. So like in Hayes County, they did close the LBJ, the student center where students have voted for a very long time at Texas State. This has happened because the administration at that school needs that space in order to be socially distant. And so there's going to be another space that's not typically a polling location and is further away from the center of the student body at Texas State. So yeah, I mean, COVID has exacerbated a lot of barriers that already existed for young people to vote.
Yeah, with Emmett too, have you received any word, for lack of a better term, gossip, rumors about anybody particularly facing barriers to voting within the trans or gender non-binary community, especially with how strict voter ID laws are in Texas?
The reality, I think, of why ID laws really, where there's requirements, where showing an ID, that don't just pertain to voting, right? Our areas of sort of unfortunate cases, and a lot of times for trans folks. In particular, where we're talking about voting, historically, the cases where we have heard and hearing the different sort of scenarios and how those played out. And one of the things that, is interesting to me is what we tell trans folks, non-binary folks in the state is actually to go prepared above and beyond, because the quicker that you can have your paperwork, the quicker that you can lay that out and sort of prevent whatever interaction is happening is really going to sort of be a harm reduction sort of component to that. If you can come over prepared and know exactly what your rights are, know exactly why you have extra documentation. And again, I really want to stress, it is not fair, it is not right. But when we talk about this, how do you engage the voting process and also encourage trans folks, non-binary folks to do it with harm reduction in mind? Because at the end of the day, where this, overall gets tricky is it comes down to the single poll worker that you're having that interaction with. So whatever that bias is or is not, or whatever that interaction is in that moment is going to be make or break if a trans person is going to be able to vote or is going to be basically disenfranchised from exercising their right to vote. And also when we look into what does it look like when somebody starts a pattern of voting, what does it look like when somebody literally physically leaves the polls? What is the likelihood for voting to become a component that is a priority for somebody to exercise within that system? And so really examining what does that look like, but also, really flagging that this is a reality for trans folks of what does it look like, unfortunately, to be in a position where anytime if you have not had your legal documentation changed to reflect name, gender, if that is part of your transition story, then essentially you're outing yourself every time you use an ID. And so and coming back and understanding how, in particular, this works with voting, but also understanding that this is a reality of life for trans folks, unfortunately.
it's so weird also thinking about this as an election year, as if we've already all gone through enough. Now we also have to think about voting and reminding our friends to vote and fill out the census. I mean, y'all, come on. It's a little bit overwhelming for me. What are y'all doing, if anything, to tell your supporters, tell your constituents that it's going to be okay? You should still vote. But have you had people flip out like, oh my God, am I going to be able to, like what you addressed, Rebecca, make it to the polls, much less go out and be alive? I don't know. Since this is kind of a doom and gloom moment too, it's something that probably should be addressed. And if you haven't addressed it, I'm glad that I'm finally bringing it up and putting y'all on the spot, obviously. Is that something, since Ray, again, this brilliant person, you just keep working with young people. Have you heard those kinds of concerns, on top of them being like young people anyway? I was flipped out when I was 21 about nothing.
Yeah, I mean, people are concerned about the election right now. And that's, I mean, right now what we're doing is we're going to try our best to talk to as many young people of color across the state as we can, to make sure that they know everything that they need to go and vote this election cycle. So, we're going to be talking to over 1.3 million voters across 1.3 million young voters across the state via text. So we're going to be sending people text messages. Watch out. Yeah.
Thank you for not calling.
Yeah. Yeah, right. But we'll be sending a bunch of text messages, letting people know, like, hey, these October 13th, through October 30th is early vote, and election day is November 3rd. We'll be giving them that information. We'll be talking to them about voter ID. We'll be making a plan with them, which is really fun, So yeah, I mean, we're just going to try and make sure that young people of color are as prepared as they can be for election time, and we'll be walking them through that process. So I think it'll be okay. I think young people will take that and will run with it. I'm trusting young people this year, so.
I would just like to thank Move Texas and Charlie, and as well as our guests, for delaying Emmett and I going to Luby's for our Blue Plate special. But of course, we are deeply engaged in the electoral process, and as someone who also covers it, I get great joy in seeing tons of people standing around in a line, or hopefully this year, just voting by mail. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Y'all are amazing. And Emmett, even though we're a couple of hours from each other, I'll see you at Luby's in Austin at like 10 a.m.
4 a.m.
4 a.m. Well, okay. Rebecca, Ray, well, I'll be there. Thanks, y'all.
Hello, my fellow Texans. I am so excited to be talking to you about one of my favorite things, registering to vote. So many people have fought for the right to vote, and there's too much at stake for us not to get out and exercise our constitutional duty. Please register to vote, and then double and triple check your voter registration status. I don't know about you, but I was raised here in Texas to believe that if any state can do something, Texas can do it better. And yet we're one of only 6 states who haven't offered no excuse vote by mail this election. Elected officials who don't want more people to vote are afraid of being held accountable for their failures. But they should know better, that when you try to intimidate a Texan out of doing something, it only makes us more determined to do it. So tonight, I'm asking each and every one of you to register to vote, keep taking the time to get involved with a campaign or a cause that's important to you, and to please have conversations with your families and neighbors. Make sure that they know that November 3rd is Election Day. The whole world is watching what's happening here in Texas and waiting to see in which direction this country will go. Your voice and your power to vote gives you the power not just to help out our state, but to change the world.
Hello, my name is Mateo. I'm a field organizer for Denton and Tarrant County with Move Texas. For me, voting is about choosing my opponent. The person in office is who I have to communicate with as I advocate for my community. I can't always vote for someone I completely support, but I can vote for someone who is willing to work with the community to listen to our ideas and concerns about how to make things better. Your vote is especially powerful in local elections, state elections, county elections. The further down the ballot you go, the more immediate effect your vote has on your day-to-day life. So please vote, please ask your friends to vote, and do your best to fill out an informed ballot.
Hey y'all, my name is Raven Douglas and I'm the political director at Move Texas, and I'm registering to vote because I know that this election is not just about who we're voting for president, but there are a number of different local races like our sheriff, our county commissioners, that impact a number of different issues like voting rights, climate change, and criminal justice. So join me today in registering to vote at movetexas.org/register.
Welcome back, welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm Charlie Bonner. This is Rock Your Reg Live, presented by Move Texas, and today is National Voter Registration Day. You've seen a lot of videos of folks talking about why they're getting registered this year. If you have a video you'd like to make yourself, we'd love to see it. Send it in, tweet it at us, post it on Facebook. I'd love to hear why you're getting registered to vote this year. I'm going to take a couple of questions before we head into some more music. So make sure you're asking your questions in the comments, tweeting them at us. We want to make sure that you're going into this election vote ready. Don't leave this night with any questions about how to get involved. First question tonight is from Letty, and she asked, where can you find out who's on the ballot? That's a really good question. And you know, it's one of the reasons we see a lot of people don't get involved. They don't feel like they know enough or any of those sorts of things. I normally use Vote 411, which is run by our partners at the League of Women Voters. You just put in your address there and it'll pull up your whole ballot. And you can either print it off, which I think is a really good option, or make yourself a little cheat sheet. In Texas, you can't actually bring in your phone with you. They might gripe at you if you do, or if you take any selfies. So good to write those down on paper. But yeah, Vote 411 is a great resource. We'll have more stuff on the Move Texas website in the coming days, so make sure you're checking back with us as well. Another question here on Facebook from Mackenzie, and she asks, how does someone vote if they are at college in a different state or if they've recently moved? That's a great question. We normally suggest that people get registered to vote at their campus address. It makes it the easiest so you can vote in person. A lot of colleges now have polling places on campus, so it makes it even easier, and you can kind of avoid that vote by mail situation, which can be difficult, as I don't even know where a post office is or how much stamps cost. I like to vote in person, and I always think that's the best option. So getting registered to vote at your campus address is always a good option. But if you are registered at home still and now you're on campus, or we know lots of people are all over the place right now with COVID. So request a vote by mail application. If you're out of the county that you're registered in, you can definitely still request a vote by mail application. Thanks for that question, Mackenzie. And Sonia asked, a lot of people say young people don't vote. Is that true, and how do we fix it? Sonia, great question. If I took a shot every time someone said that young people don't vote, I would not be able to host this program. You know, we hear this narrative all the time, and the problem is not that young people have some sort of apathy issue, we have an access issue. A lot of people have put up barriers to prevent young people, people of color, low-income folks from accessing the ballot box, and it's absolute bullshit. And so the best way that we can overcome that voter suppression is for those of us who can to show up in such large numbers that we show that we mean business, that we overcome that margin of difference that could be a result of voter suppression, which we know is very real in a state like Texas. And the state of the youth vote in Texas is actually really strong. Between 2014 and 2018, the youth vote actually tripled in Texas. That's under 30 voters, tripled in turnout. And what we know is voting is a habit. Once people show up, they're showing up again. They're flexing that electoral muscle. They're being a voter. It's not just something you do, it's something that you are. And we know that young people are ready in this next election. So I really appreciate that comment from you, Sonia. And we know that young people are ready to show up. That's all the questions I'm taking for right now. We're about halfway through, so make sure you keep asking those questions. Tweet us, comment. We want to hear from you. And we'll get back to you with a numbers update in just a little bit, but I think we should hear a little bit more music. So let's take a listen.
All right, y'all. I'll be closing today with a song that I wrote called The American Dream. I chose to perform this song today because I think we all have a dream, and this song is my personal American dream. Living each day, conquering dreams, seeking opportunities, and never giving up. And also paying homage to those that have paved the way. Please, please, please register to vote. The deadline to register to vote in Texas is October 5th. Texas early voting starts October 13th through October 30th. And be sure to follow through and cast your vote on Election Day, November 3rd. Thanks again to Move Texas for having us here. Y'all be safe.
Sun's gone down, another wasted day. It's never coming back. You've let it slip away. Think of all the things you could have done. Would have become. Maybe you've been broken. Maybe you've been hurt. Forget about the words you've heard from those who don't know. Don't let it slip away. Don't let doubt get in your way. Don't let fear be more than it seems. Make the impossible be possible, and your bravery be bigger than the land of the free, the American dream. Every waking moment is an opportunity. As long as you're alive, you got the chance to be what you desire. Follow your heart. If you can fly like a bird in your sleep, wake up and be bold. Don't be shy. Open up and realize. Don't let it slip away. Don't let doubt get in your way. Don't let fear be more than it seems. Make the impossible be possible, and your bravery be bigger than the land of the free. Put yourself in someone else's shoes, someone who wished they were you. Instead they're living life hanging by a thread, missing opportunities, many possibilities to fight through defeat for the land of the free. And now there's a risk that offer me, so I could live my dream. Don't let it slip away. Don't let doubt get in your way. Don't let fear be more than it seems. Make the impossible be possible, and your bravery be bigger than the land of the free, the American dream. Make the impossible be possible, and your bravery be bigger than the land of the free, the American dream. The American dream.
Happy National Voter Registration Day. It is a national designated day to celebrate our democracy. It was first observed in 2012, and millions of people have been registered on this day since then. It's gained momentum every year. In fact, I think about 3 million people have registered on this day since its inception as a designated day of celebration in 2012. This is going to be an incredibly important year for people to be registered and to vote. Here in Texas, you have to be registered by October 5th. So it's only a week or so away. You need to get registered. This is an important one. You want to vote in the presidential election. We have a U.S. Senator up. We have our Congress, members of Congress up for election. We have our state reps up for election. We have city council offices that are up for election, and you have the opportunity to vote in this community on Prop A and actually bring a mass public transit system to this city for what it'll do for traffic and climate change and the like. If you haven't registered yet, or you want to check your registration status to see if you are, you can request a form at movetexas.org/register. movetexas.org/register, and you can check all that out. Please make sure that you're registered. Make sure all your friends, all your family members register too.
Got one more. It's called Up in the Air. It's the last song on an EP that I released a year ago. It's called I Just Blame Me. You can find it wherever you stream things. Thanks again to Move Texas for having me. And get out there to vote, you guys. It's obviously a really critical election, and every vote matters.
These days I can't seem to get into the car without wanting to burst into tears. It's the only place I'm alone long enough to remember that I don't know where I'll live this time next year. I crank up sad songs to try and ease my mind. I find my thoughts get less aggressive as my dial turns red. When the music ends, I'm just left more afraid that no matter what I do, I'll think I've made a mistake. Well, it's all up in the air now. There's nothing I can do but watch it all come down. No use in being scared now, 'cause no matter how it lands, I'm gonna have to be around. These days I can't seem to step into a bar without wishing that you were near. I can't tell if I'll miss you, if I'm lonely or just bored. But regardless, you're convenient, aren't you, dear? I used to think love was just a guarantee. If I kept weight off and smiled, you'd pay attention to me. But that's not love at all, and it just hurts like hell. I'll never find real love till I choose to love myself. So it's all up in the air now.
Happy voting, you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Welcome back, and thanks so much to Lainey Gonzalez for that. This is not her first Move event, and we love having her every time. And all the artists that are using their platforms to talk about civic engagement, registering to vote, getting out there to vote. It takes all of us, and I think it's not just on the artists, but all of us use our platforms right now to make a difference. And I think our volunteers are doing that right now. I'd love to check in with them if we can see their Zoom call. Hello, everyone. Really, they're doing an incredible job tonight in all of the calls that they're making. And they're just folks like you and me, people who decided to get in the fight, right? And people who decided to sign up for a volunteer shift. And that's really how we make a difference right now. And so I really encourage you to sign up for a volunteer shift if you can, and I'm super grateful to them. And I do have an update right now. So far tonight, our volunteers have called 70,000 voters. Yeah! 70,000. That is a ton of people. So thank you so much to all of our team there, and they're still going. We got about an hour left on the phones and a lot more people to talk to. So shout out to all y'all for really powering this evening. Our next conversation I'm really excited about because Latinx voters make up more than 40% of all Texas voters. And still, campaigns aren't reaching out to Latinx voters in this massive growing block, this massive voting block that really defines this state. And still, candidates and campaigns fail to reach out, fail to have honest conversations with Latinx voters. And we have a true panel expert, a panel of experts joining us to break it all down. We have our friends from Deeds Not Words in Battleground, Texas, moderated by my dear friend Ashley Lopez from KUT. Let's take a look.
Well, happy National Voter Registration Day, guys. My name is Ashley Lopez. I'm a reporter at KUT, that's Austin's NPR station. We are heard throughout most of the Central Texas region. Today, we're going to have a conversation about Latinx outreach in Texas and how that's going ahead of the presidential election. I'm joined today by Claudia Yoli Ferla. She's the co-executive director at Deeds Not Words, and Oscar Silva, the executive director at Battleground, Texas. Thanks for joining us, you guys.
Thanks for having me.
So, well, let's start with, I want to get just a gut check of like how you guys are assessing like Latinx outreach in general in Texas ahead of the election and how it's been going compared to other years. As many of you know, like both of you probably know, campaigns don't often spend a lot of time or money on reaching out to these voters. And I'm wondering if you think it's different this time around. I'll start with you, Claudia.
Well, thanks so much, Ashley. I think it's such an important conversation given not only what we're going through as a country and as a world with the pandemic, but also in such an important year, which is our presidential election happening in November of 2020. I think many people like me, many people in our community believe that this is the election of our lifetimes. We are, there's a lot at stake. And I think it's really fascinating and interesting that, campaigns think about Latinx communities as a special type of project, right? I think when we talk about the Latinx community, we encompass 40% of the Texas electorate. So when we are talking about doing outreach to voters, we mean doing outreach to the Latinx community. And so I think that this is going to be the year where we make our voices heard, where we show up in big numbers, and where we bring our families and friends to tell the real story of Texas.
Oscar?
Yeah, I mean exactly what Claudia hit. This year has been incredibly important. In the last 10 years, we've seen, not just in Texas, but nationally, and we know Texas sort of represents a microcosm for the electoral climate often within our state in the national scope. And so if you look at the growth of Latinx, our community in the entire country in the last 10 years, you've seen that the largest growth has actually happened in Texas. And so at the moment, as Claudia says, our share of Latinx voter relative to the entire voter population of every state, we are second only to New Mexico. And of course, in absolute numbers, we are the largest of the two. And when you look at that specifically, one of the things why it's so important that organizations here represented and also in Texas, so MOVE, Deeds, Battleground, you have Texas Freedom Network, you have just so many organizations that work in youth engagement, is because of that large share. The Latinx demographic is the youngest one. And so not only is our about 14, 16-year-olds the largest share of our Latinx growth, which means that we have people who are paying attention right now, who are going to become active voter or eligible voters and hopefully active voters soon. But the second to that is the newly eligible range, so the 18-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 24-year-olds. And so it is a critical time to make sure that we are empowering our Latinx community via our youth. Also because it's such an odd year, whereas before strategies had been employed and tested, and some true and some not so much. This year, everything has been turned on its head. We've had to just find how to organize in different ways, mostly virtually, mostly digitally. And we do know there's a gap in our Latinx community when it comes to a digital divide. And so being able to find the messenger in every household or neighborhood or just group that makes sense within the Latinx community has been incredibly critical. We are lucky that the largest growth does come from who is likely to be that person who's attached to digital strategy, which is the younger voter. And so it's a challenge that came with it, but also the fact that Latinx as a community is growing at a faster pace, but also it's a youth that's going the biggest. And so that is a strength in this scenario.
I assume for like engagement work, like the big game is getting the attention of voters, and considering that COVID-19 has been particularly devastating to the Latinx community here in Texas, people are dealing with actual life and death issues as well as huge financial burdens. I wonder, has it been harder to mobilize on the front end, even just registering voters? Like I'm thinking early on in the pandemic, especially, like what kind of issues were kind of presented with this pandemic that no one saw coming when they were making their outreach plans months and months ago?
Yeah, so I think COVID-19 shed a light on so many of the injustices and issues in our communities, especially those that are, living in marginalized community, underrepresented communities, and diverse identities, right? I think that very specifically for us, an organization that works around gender equity, we saw how COVID-19 really shed a light on the amount of people that need access to healthcare, reproductive healthcare services as well. And so I think that, COVID-19 has been an opportunity for us to really amplify these conversations, not only on the front of voter, November 2020 and like being able to access the ballot box, the importance of being able to have things like vote by mail, online voter registration, but also other things, access to healthcare, access to reproductive healthcare services. And also, as we talk about, everything that's happening in the world, specifically here in the United States with Black Lives Matter, also talking about how COVID-19 has disproportionately affected people of color, Black and Indigenous people. And these are important issues that we need to continue to talk about post and after an election. And I think COVID-19 has provided an opportunity for us to do so online and accessible to different kinds of communities.
Voter outreach, also like a big part of it is voter education, especially at a time like this when like the pandemic has changed how people vote in some cases, as well as where they vote. Like some polling locations are just not a safe option as before. I wonder how you think that aspect of voter engagement is going. Do you think particularly in the Latinx community, all these like communities are getting like enough information about what is like the legality of vote by mail, like what their options are and where they should vote and how they should make a voting plan? I'm wondering what you guys are seeing on the ground.
Yeah, there definitely has been an effort, and just it's let's cut some slack to everybody, because one of the things that's happened is that there hasn't been not even just consistency in leadership. I mean, I'm talking about our government as far as guidance goes. But there hasn't even been a way to kind of expect or forecast what's going to happen in the next few months. And so a lot of the groups that do this kind of a work very, very well have been having to change plans sometimes week to week and strategies week to week. In fact, some groups were able to put people back on the ground and in 3 days to come back out and things like that because of the unfortunate lack of leadership when it comes to guidance and navigating as a state this pandemic. And so yes, there has been some, and I think most groups have kind of just been of the idea that the way we're operating today is how we're going to operate through the next several weeks that are left of the election. What's happening right now is, yes, there's a lot of digital communication. There's folks who have resources are sending a lot of mail information. I think news are going to be key resources, especially in the Latinx community, because there is a lot of trust between, unlike a lot of demographics, when it comes to Latinxs, there is a lot of trust between us and our news sources. And so I think it's going to be up to those. I feel comfortable and confident that enough information is going to go out. I don't know that it's going to change a lot of the patterns. I think most of the vote will still be able to come through in person, which in a way is unfortunate. But I do think that's how it's going to go.
Anything to add, Claudia?
I'll just second what Oscar said. I think that, there's 100%, like, I think that this pandemic is definitely changing and shifting the ways in which we are be showing up to vote, and in big numbers. I am confident in big numbers in November of 2020. But also, I think it also shed the light, and I talked a little bit about this earlier, about the need for online voter registration, about the need for expanding vote by mail to all Texans. These are things that other states do already and do it successfully. And I think that those in our state leadership, need to take action and ensure that we're able to provide these services so that people can feel empowered when they're showing up to vote, right? With the right information, the right tools, and not literally putting their lives at risk.
Yeah, and I have a question about misinformation. Politico recently reported that at least in a couple of their states, including Florida, Latino voters were getting targeted with like outright misinformation. And Florida is a different animal. Also, those voters are those Latinx voters are very different. In some cases, they're just very different from the kind of voters we have here in Texas. But I'm wondering, as like organizers, is this something you guys are looking out for, anticipating, and have like plans of action to address if it comes up?
100%. I think that if 2016 taught us anything, it's that there is intentional misinformation out there to keep people from being engaged and to keep people from voting, and voting for the candidates that are truly representative of their values and their needs. I'll speak for my organization at Deeds Not Words, Deeds Action Fund. We're really, really, really investing in ensuring that every young person, every young woman, non-binary, gender non-conforming person of color has the right information when they're coming to the polls, that they feel empowered showing up with their values to vote for the people that are going to best represent them, and to use our resources as an organization, whether it be our social media platforms at headquarters or through our 25 student chapters in high schools and colleges across Texas, to ensure that this information is coming from a trusted source. And of course, working with you, our media partners, to also share this information with communities across Texas.
Yeah, and if I can add just anything to that, Ashley, as well, is that I think, for many years, I mean Texans who are doing the work here, have geared up for something like this unexpectedly. We weren't expecting a pandemic to happen, right? But we knew misinformation has been used and it was coming in higher numbers. And so there are a number of hotlines, both partisan. Actually, they're all nonpartisan, but they come from both nonpartisan and partisan sources that are available to help. And spreading this information has been our task that many organizations have taken, making sure that people know that there's this number. It's an operation that is usually statewide. There's multiple lawyers in many parts of the state taking these calls and even running to voting locations if there's an issue with that. I think organizations that are being driven digitally are doing a really good job at making sure that there's constant information that's combating what we're seeing last. And because a lot of organizations, especially those that work with youth, like the ones you represented and some more, are always so in touch with the very population they're trying to reach, there's a constant feedback and there's a constant recreation and reproduction of what's necessary out there, what's coming out. And for whoever is listening in today, I just want to make sure that folks aren't afraid to shut down misinformation. I know that we have this very ingrained culture, and it's fair. We don't talk politics and we don't talk religion at the dinner table. But one thing is not talking politics and religion, and one thing is just letting misinformation fly out, in social media or in conversations or in places of gathering, churches are gathering again, or things like that. And it's important to make an effort to correct those things because they can flow. We've maybe before thought they were weak strategies, weak tactics. We've now seen that because of social media, they have the potential of growing and spiraling into very strong, effective strategies. And so I think it is our responsibility to, whether we engage in trying to convince somebody otherwise, we at least do share, if there is misinformation, what the correct information is on a daily basis.
I wonder what you both are hoping you see from either campaigns or groups like yourselves in those last few weeks that ensure that there's an engaged Latinx electorate here in Texas.
Well, I'll start with some things. I mean, I'm hoping all the work that we've put in starts to pay off. Actually, frankly, this is one of the reasons why organizations like, again, I keep saying this, the ones here represented are effective, is because this is year-round organizing. It's not just electoral organizing. And so whereas because of resources, a lot of candidates, especially in some groups, don't really come in until the last 3, 4, maybe even 5 months if we're lucky. Battleground Texas, These Not Words, MOVE, Texas Freedom Network, just an array of organizations that we're very lucky to have here in Texas. Texas Organizing Project, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but work year-round on different things. And so basically this is just, the last run towards that home base essentially, or that last kick towards the goalie, towards the goal, or whatever sport you want to use. But we're just hoping it all pays off. And so we've been lining up our infrastructure, we've been lining up our electorate, we've been considering and keeping a relationship with them, and they have with us. We've become trusted sources. And so now we are just essentially making sure that the last message gets to them, which is the correct information. We empower them with that information so that they can effectively cast their ballot, which is what we've been hoping for. And so again, in 2018, we saw the Latinx vote in Texas gain the most political power of any other ethnic group. I believe it ended at about 127% increase. Divide that with the youth, which increased 500%. In fact, traditionally in Texas, 1 out of every 10 votes, or the ratio between old voters and young voters, is 1 to 10. It went down to 1 to 3. And so, and when you know that the largest demographic growth in Texas, or when it comes to Latinos, has been, or in the country, has been in Texas, and the largest piece is Latino. There are a lot of pieces that are moving, but that are promising, and that we've been harnessing for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years even, that we're hoping pay off.
Yeah, and like Oscar said, this is so much bigger than just 2020 and the last few days of this election. This is also about accountability post the 2020 election, right? And to ensure that we continue to hold those in power accountable for some of the policies that they're going to be enacting in our communities. And we hope that those policies are reflective of the identities, of the diverse needs of our communities, and that they are really upholding our stories when they are passing policy and creating more opportunities for engagement.
Great, and I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much to both of you for talking to me today. I'm Ashley Lopez. I'm a reporter at KUT, that's Austin's NPR station. We cover Central Texas. And I was speaking to Oscar Silva, the executive director at Battleground Texas, and Claudia Yoli Ferla, the co-executive director at Deeds Not Words. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
Hi, I'm Victoria Laval. I'm the Laredo field organizer with Move Texas. This year, I'm registering to vote because climate change needs to be a priority.
I'm Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. Thank you so much, first of all, for being involved and for fighting for a seat at the table. You didn't ask for COVID. You didn't ask for this economy, nor did you build the systems of oppression that we're trying to fight right now. But you will inherit them, and we need your help making a change. In 2018, there was record turnout for young people. Compared to the 2014 elections, turnout tripled, which is great. But we need to keep that up, and we have a long way to go. Here in Harris County, the largest county in Texas, we're doing everything possible to expand access to the vote, to make it easier for people to vote. We've looked at all the best practices, we've sat and thought about creative ideas, and we didn't just pick and choose some of that, we did all of it. So it's as easy as it can possibly be under the law. While we can make it easy for you to vote, we can't make you register, we can't make you participate. And that's where we need your help. If you're watching this, you probably already vote, and if you don't, I hope you'll make sure and register. But we need you to help get other young people to register, to be poll workers, to run for office, perhaps. We need new perspectives. Voting and making decisions for the future of this country, that's the only way we will come out of this, and the only way we will come out stronger.
Hey everyone, I'm Molly Birch, And thank you so much to Move Texas for having me. I'm about to play a couple songs, but before I do that, I want to remind you how important it is to vote and to register. So the deadline to register in Texas is October 5th, which is coming up really soon. But today we are celebrating National Voter Registration Day. And if you go to movetexas.org/register, you can register today. I'm gonna start with a song called Please Be Mine. I told you once until you again. You really are my very best friend, but I had to go. Every time I think of you now, I get so blue somehow, 'cause I still love you, love you. Please be also just talk a little bit about why I vote and why I think it's really important. Well, first off, I just think this upcoming election is the most important election we've seen in history. It's so important to vote. It's so important to get your voting plan figured out, because we need to be able to vote safely. And personally, I just think it is one of the best ways we can use our voices to create the change that we want. So I'm a big advocate for voting and getting people registered. So please do it. And yeah, I'm gonna play one more song. It's called Wild. And thank y'all so much for having me, and thanks for all that you do. There she goes, there she goes, there goes my baby, there she goes. Watch her dance, make romance, there goes my baby, there she goes. She's so wild, she's so wild, she promise me you'll register to vote and make your voting plan.
Thank you so much for listening. We want to invite you to go to movetexas.org/register. We really want to invite you to vote and make a change for everything, for everyone, for climate change, for racial issues. Whatever you think it's important for this country, we really want to encourage you to go and vote. Thank you.
Hey y'all, welcome back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm Charlie Bonner. This is Rock Your Reg Live, presented by Move Texas. And if you haven't yet, check your voter registration status at movetexas.org/register. It's never been more important, so make sure that you do it right now. You just heard from the incredible Molly Birch and Esther Romance. We're so grateful for them. For being a part of this. So thank you to all of the musicians who have been here tonight and to all of you for your questions. I hope we've answered as many as we can. I've gotten at least 2 from Old Flames, so I feel like this production is going very well for me personally. And the last one I did want to answer, somebody was asking they had been displaced due to COVID, living back with their parents now for the next few months. You absolutely should get registered to vote if that's where you're living and plan to be during the election and you feel like it's the place that you call home. So make sure that you're getting registered. Again, use that movetexas.org/register link. Thanks for reaching out. Great to hear from you again. And I also wanted to touch on something that Oscar mentioned back in that really great panel with Ashley and Claudia. He said that one of the most important things that we can do is be a source of information. And that's what I'm telling everyone right now. We know that there's going to be all sorts of disinformation going into this election. There already is, and we can expect more. One of the most important things that we can do right now after we register to vote and we register 5 friends with us is become that trusted source of information. Follow MOVE, follow the League of Women Voters, the Texas Civil Rights Project, Deeds Not Words, Battleground Texas, all these sorts of folks that you trust in this space. Get that information from them and then share it with your friends. People need to know when the deadlines are. They need to know that the deadline to register to vote is October 5th. It's coming up soon, okay? People need to know that you got to share that information, and you could really be the difference between someone sitting on the sidelines, not having the information they need, and really making a difference this election. So follow us, share our stuff, be a source of information. One of my final plugs for the night. We have some more great music coming up. I'm really excited about this next band up from North Texas. They've done a couple events with us at Move Texas, and we always have such a great time with them. So I'm honored to welcome Luna Luna. Let's take a listen.
Everybody, we're called Luna Luna, here to perform for you guys. Make sure you go out there and vote, and let's have some fun.
Welcome back, everyone. And we are closing out our time here at Rock Your Reg live here from Austin. And it's been such a great time. So many great musicians, critical conversations, videos from leaders across Texas, and young people who are getting involved for the very first time. I'm so grateful to everyone who helped us put this night together and made this an incredible National Voter Registration Day from Home edition. And as we've mentioned all night, Texas has not made it easy. It is a difficult state to register in on a good day, and we are on the worst of days. And still, I never thought that we'd be able to register voters. Without online voter registration in Texas, most of the work we do is putting clipboards in hands, right? And so I thought this day would never come and we wouldn't be able to reach all the people we did. But because of really determined volunteers, young people across the state, today's been the most visited day on the Move Texas registration website. And I know that you're still gonna keep sharing it with your friends, throwing it in those group chats, and making sure that all of your friends have checked their registration status and gotten registered. And more importantly tonight, we've called 75,000 young people across the state. I'm so excited about all the people that we've contacted. Oh, wow. This is ridiculous. Our 3 balloons have dropped, making this an incredible event. I'm so proud of everything that we've put together tonight and so grateful to all of y'all for joining us. This has been a hell of a time. I hope you'll join us next year for National Voter Registration Day. Who knows what the world will look like then, but hopefully it'll be great. And closing us out tonight, we have a very special performance. Please welcome AJR.
Hey, this is Jack from AJR, and I'm registered to vote because it's on us to make change. Move Texas is trying to register as many people to vote as possible, and the registration deadline is October 5th. So swipe up to register to vote right now.
No thank you is what I should have said. I should be in bed, but temptations of trouble on my tongue, trouble's yet to come. Like one sip, bad for me. One hit, bad for me. One kiss, bad for me. But I gave in so easily, and no thank you is how it should have gone. I should stay strong, but I'm weak. And what's wrong with that? Boy, oh boy, I love you when I fall for that. I'm weak. And what's wrong with that? Boy, oh boy, I love you when I fall for that. No thank you, they call me after dark. I don't want no part, but my habits, they hold me like a grudge. I promise I won't budge. Like one sip, bad for me. One hit, bad for me. One kiss, bad for me. I gave in so easily, and no thank you is how it should have gone. I should stay strong, but I'm weak. What's wrong with that? Boy, oh boy, I love you when I fall for that. I'm weak. And what's wrong with that? Boy, oh boy, I love you when I fall for that. I'm but I'm weak. And what's wrong with that? Boy, oh boy, I love you when I fall for that. We fall for that. Wake up, we fall again. Falling, falling, falling. Yeah, yeah. We fall for that. Can't wait to fall again. Falling, falling. Ooh, I like it. One sip, bad bad for me. One hit, bad for me. One kiss, bad for me. But I gave in so easily, and no thank you is how it should have gone. I should stay strong, but I'm weak. And what's wrong with that? Boy, oh boy, I love you when I fall for that. I'm weak. And what's wrong with that? Boy, oh boy, I love you when I fall for that. I'm ooh, ah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, ah, yeah, yeah. But I'm weak. And what's wrong with that? Boy, oh boy, I love you when I fall for that.
Listen, that balloon drop was the most 2020 bullshit that has happened all year, and so I'm bringing this live back, and we're doing it right. I want to thank everyone who has been a part of Rock Your Reg Live. This has been an incredible National Voter Registration Day. Thanks to all of our volunteers who called more than 75,000 young people tonight. Let's do this right. Let's do it, all right? This is like the 1990 DNC in here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great night. Don't forget to check your voter registration status. Have a good one.